welcome to our Superstonk DD Spotlight. We have TiberiusWoodwind and Poenh with the barbecue, who goes by Poenh, with us today. Basically, we wanted to do a spotlight week to put more of a focus on DD for Superstonk. We wanted to have a few of the people who took part in that come and talk with us about their posts. Oh, well, should I introduce you too, Crybad?
Sure. No, I'm Crybad, a Reddit mod, and I'm just here to help Platt ask questions and just engage in some casual conversation.
Thank you.
Hey, Poenh, real quick, when did you start writing DD for Superstonk, or just in general?
Oh my God, I have the best origin story. Oh my God. Okay. This is my fucking origin story. All right. It's so good. Okay, so here's my origin story. So I mean, I'm an engineer, and I by profession and education, whatever. So I didn't know shit about the stock market, and I purposely did not learn anything about it because I think it's a dirty field. Right before the January 21 sneeze, I was dating this guy, and what happened is I caught him cheating on me for caught him cheating on me. So there was one thing I felt I can basically he knew that, or one subject that I thought he knew, but I didn't. And so because I knew he stalked my Reddit page, and because I knew it would piss him off, I promised myself that I would be all about stocks and teach myself every single day. I decided to start writing DD. That's why I purposely started a Twitter, because because I wanted him to make sure he saw my shit. And so the only reason I used my photo is because I knew that would gather more attention, so therefore grabbing my DD more attention. And so all of this shit literally started because of relationship spite, and I just continued it. Yeah, it's the best, right? And it was fucking hilarious. So that's how I got into all this. I've never that's the only reason I started writing DD. It probably I started writing it in April or May. I was very, very lucky to actually for that piece of shit cheat on me in December, January, and it just happened to be a few weeks before the sneeze, and I got caught up in the Wall Street bets, all of that, and that's the only reason I've got into this. So fuck you, thank you, Todd, because of course it means Todd. And
Todd.
yeah, right. And so that's literally the only reason I got in this. I think it's just fucking hilarious how successful it's been. But I mean, I made a promise that I would be all about this until the squeeze happened. I was expecting that it would be around March time, like a lot of other people. I did not expect this to last this long, but I made a promise to myself, and I want to keep it. And now I'm here. But also I just so I continued basically doing it because I really like math and doing data analysis in my free time. I don't know. And it's really fun. It's just fun to teach people about math and shit.
Nice. Well, it's fun to read your posts. So that's a really good origin story.
Right?
That's a good question too, Crybad. Thank you. Tibbs, what about you?
So what was it? March last year. That's the first time that I had written, or it was the original Taste the Rainbow came out. But before that, I had this thought in my head of, what if the price is just never really where it's supposed to be? What if there's something bigger that pushes everything in the same direction? So with Taste the Rainbow, that was when I first started saying, hey, what if everything is tilted downwards? That if we didn't have that tilt in there, price would still be up higher, and that it's just affecting everything. So across this year, it's been, a lot of learning about different ways of how to interpret that, making lots of mistakes along the way and just learning stuff. So it's been failing upwards pretty reliably.
Well, I have a few questions. Poenh, I took a couple questions from your post, but then I added a couple questions too. One of the questions was, hypothetically speaking, in this theoretical algorithm you noticed, are there any particular inefficiencies or exploitable parameters?
Oh yeah, that was a really good question. And so one thing I gotta first define is the word inefficiency. So I wasn't sure whoever made that question and what they meant by that. But given how I thought that all this is controlled by computational scripts, and also being aware that the type of environment that the stock market is should be unpredictable, given how the laws of supply and demand, and also since human beings are emotional and unpredictable as well. So therefore they would create an environment that would be unpredictable. I can tell by the data that like their retail has no influence over the share price. I mean, if that was true, we would probably already be MOS right now. We would not see these constant like sideways trading that we do as well. And so like we've been DRSing, we've been doing all this stuff to actually change the share price. I mean, shoot, we can also review the various different history of like when all this stuff was going down. When like the first GameStop saga like started, we all believed that there were a series of check marks that would have to happen in order for MOS to occur. I mean, one of them is like, oh, we're super stoked that Gary Gensler and he's going to change everything. No, he didn't. Or it's like, oh, this is double, triple, quadruple witching day. This is going to be the game changer. It wasn't. Or like, oh, like we have all these like proposals and SEC like laws and regulations that are going to be implemented. There was even like someone would make it like a check mark going down the row, like as soon as all these are check mark, it's going to change everything. It didn't. And so we have all these traditional things and events that should, in theory, be catalysts. I mean, they are catalysts, I would assume, for many other different type of stocks. And I think they would be normal catalysts or provide some sort of influence to the share price. I mean, that's why they're known to cause differences or cause influence. Like that's why double, triple, whatever, quadruple witching day is known for what it is, because it causes all this shit. But like none of that stuff, despite how supposedly like influential it is, has affected it. I mean, shoot, do you remember how like GameStop went into like the Russell 1000, and we all thought that was going to be the catalyst, but it wasn't. And so, and like in regards to the retail investor, like the common peasants like you and I, trying to basically take advantage of any inefficiencies, that would provide evidence that we do not have it, because obviously everything we've been doing hasn't been changed anything. But so in regards to I want to make mad tendies and make mad shit, or make mad monies, mad gains, and I want to make and stuff like that, that can easily be exploited. Because I mean, one of my more infamous things that I have produced was the table of recurring dates that showed how these upward runs almost happened to the day since like 2013. Because I was able to do that can be taken advantage. That is an inefficiency. There are, if you pay well enough attention, you'd be able to identify all these patterns and be able to trade towards or against it. That, I guess, could be an inefficiency. So in regards to basically looking at inefficiency on like a theoretical computer script itself, we can looking at that vision. So every single computer script or algorithm or what have you is written by a man, or when I say man, I mean like man or woman, I mean like common man. And so therefore it is restrained within those however it's written. And so, I mean, there are inefficiencies with that. And so the thing about computer scripts and stuff like that is, especially in like something that's trying to use the stock market, is that it's trying to control us, who are the emotional retailer. And no matter how much you try, you cannot create a computer script or whatever the hell have you that is able to create contingency plans for anything that you and I for anything that happens. It's impossible. There are way too many different types of scenarios and environments. It's impossible. But so the reason as to why I named it the Ouroboros, not only because I love being dramatic, but also because through my data analysis, one thing I discovered is I thoroughly believe we are in this era or saga, and it occurred because like a computer script or something that's computational and systemic freaked out. I was like, oh my god, I like something, all these like if then loops or if else whatever, and then it's below the share price or whatever. So it went into a type of I guess parameter, and type of various different kind of parameters that caused like a 404 error. It's like, what the fuck? And that's one reason as to why the sneeze happened. That shit, I believe how that shit happened because of computational scripts. I called my shit the Ouroboros because I think that MOS was going to happen as soon as the computer script itself is going to destroy itself. I mean, it's so overpowering that the only thing that can destroy it is itself. I mean, we can't do anything. Big money can't do really anything, because if they could, they would lower the share price to zero. The SEC can't do anything, can't do anything. And so whatever type of entities or whatever that are controlling and influencing the share price right now is out of anyone's control. And so all we got to do is just wait. And so, I mean, that's
the next question that the same person kind of asked, but so I'm not sure if you kind of answered it. Where do you believe this algorithm originates? Broker dealers, high frequency traders, like where?
Oh, so I first noticed that GameStop itself started becoming more systemic around, actually, as soon as it started back in 2002. I haven't looked too much previously to that, but I mean, there's a lot of various different literature that reviews how, I mean, high frequency trading algorithms, fiber optics, and all those other types of technology used for high speed communications was implemented in the early 2000s. I mean, one book primarily, I mean, that was it written by, this book here. Like this book here, Flash Boys.
Flash Boys, yeah.
I mean, he even specifically went into how like they were developing fiber optic cables, and that around the early 2000s, and they went ham with all of it in like 2005 to 2010, to the extent that there's no longer the bullpen, like the cry bullpen thingy, you know, where people just scream buy and sells. And so I think that's when it started really going into just like all these algorithms, computational scripts, which kind of simulates to or refers somewhat similar to GameStop. I did a DD on that also as well. But so I've done so as I continue my current DD, one thing I have been working on is to discover various different kind of algorithms. What are their purposes? What are their objectives? What are their faults, and how they're characterized? And so one thing I've discovered is that there are a lot. People assume that it's just one, but there isn't. I mean, BATS is known for being really fucked up and like having this old god power in high frequency trading. There's a bunch of them. There's not just single one. And so given how there's a bunch of them, there is not it's not limited to just any specific type of securities. They have been incorporated into like the VIX, the SPY, like other things like that. When someone invests in ETFs, you're going to want something different than something you're going to like invest in VIX or whatever, or some sort of volatility index. To think that is just one and it's limited to just like one type of security is not be a good idea. I mean, because like all the stuff it basically does is make hedge funds corruption and make them making money easier. And so, yeah, it's everywhere.
The cycles that you discovered before, are they still going for GME at least?
Yes. So the cycles themselves the cycles themselves have been going on for a very, very long time. So in regards to that table that I produced, I went back to 2013. If you look into previous years as well and do characterizations on studies on them, they also produce these cycles as well, but they just happen to be a little more difficult to identify because they're not seen in this beautiful downward linear trend. They are seen in like way wonkier ways. They're seeing like way more volatility, or they're seeing like with an exponential change or whatever. And so like one way to combat that I've been working on is essentially performing various different data transformations. So it'd be easier to cross compare that with the linear trend from like 2013 to 2020, and also cross compare that with what we got going on from 2021 to 2023 as well. I mean, so these cycles have been occurring for ages, but there are other types of things that are like basically controlling the overall shape.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you plan to update? Oh yeah. So the timeline, DD, I know you.
Oh my God,
yes! Post wasn't about that, but I have to ask you about it because that was my favorite always. Like,
oh my God, right?
Loved the timeline, DD, that you did. Right? Are you planning to update that at all? I know it's a lot of work. I know a ton of stuff has happened, but I had to ask.
Are you talking about my cute little graph with the like Nyan cats and stuff?
I love it. Yeah, I always love the little like guy, like the henchman looking guy.
No, I totally work on updating it. Okay, I work on it periodically, but it is like a bitch because it's super hard to identify thing. And so was working actually a lot with that in regards to the guy who created gmetimeline.com, and he made my job super easy because he did all the investigations and put in like a nice little timeline in order for me to make that. And it was just super easy, just like copy, like paste the title, put it in there, make it cute. But then he had a kid or family stuff or whatever, and so he stopped doing that. That made my life a lot harder in order to make the graphs. Right? Yeah, for sure. And so I've been like, so I mean, yes, I work on it, but like, I have a better computer now that's able to handle all of that, like that data within it, because I make it in Excel because I don't know how to make it else. Yeah, make it in Excel. because I don't know how to. Yeah, I don't like. I like. Yeah, I made it in Excel. Like all my like pictures I use are made in PowerPoint. I don't know how to use anything else. I use them as Paint sometimes too, but like I don't know how to use anything else. But yeah, that's another thing that causes the fact that I use Excel, and Excel is not the best known like program for any type of formatting in visuals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's amazing. I
I
love
love
it. So
it
thank
too.
you.
Like, oh, great. No, I like, yeah, and have like deep fucking values in the NCAT. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So when are you going to make an update post? Because I know you kind of hinted at that. So when do you plan to make an update post about the algorithms?
Oh my gosh. And so I struggle with this. Well, that is a very common question that I get. I am currently working on basically a fucking book in regards to this thing. And so I wish I knew. Right now, I am still in the like data or research and the compiling type stage. And that alone, I have about 60 to 70 pages like of just compiling just data or basically just events or like very different things. I think that I like my links and sources and such like that. I mean, I even have a bibliography, but and so it's going to take, I wish I knew, and but it's super long and I don't know how to cut it or subsection it because I feel like that would make it difficult to understand. But one thing is that for a lot of us readers, people don't understand the amount of work that is required to do it. I mean, like, first of all, you have to be able to observe or have a hypothesis or whatever. And then once you created that, you have to go research it and like determine if that's right. And if you're lucky, if that's right, then you have to write it up. And once you write it up, you sometimes you have to dumb it down. And once you dumb it down, then you post. And so people don't understand, I think, the amount of work that like editors have. All the information that we're using in order to produce all this type of research and stuff like that is all public information. We do not have insider like information. We do not have like, we're not a fly on the wall whatsoever. We are working with public information. And so therefore we can only create as accurate as we can theories as to what's going on, because I mean it's all public shit. I mean, so I mean if you think about, you're given the shit research, I mean you're given the shit like basically starting material, and from there you're going to like basically scramble to all these places in order to create something that makes sense and create something that actually has viability to it. Given how we're only using public information, is that there's no way in fuck we can be 100% sure about what is being said, because we were not there for whatever fuckery happened. We were not part of the meetings to like discuss all this shit. We were not there for whatever type of crap that you have you. And so therefore, I mean, we can only like be as confident as we can because we were not part of the actual like decision making. And like that's why sometimes we're wrong, because we weren't there, but we're fucking scrambling. Yeah. But yeah, my DD has been taking a while because like yeah, it just takes a while. And then on top of it, I don't know how to end things well. And also like not only do like you go with the research stage and then you writing stage, but then I talk about the dumbing down stage. And so that also takes a lot of time, because you also not only do you have to research like some like not only do you have to observe and identify some sort of fucking that's going on, but furthermore you have to go within that and define terms or define like ideas or concepts like that are associated with that fuckery itself. And that can take a while as well. I mean, that's why you make all these cute little images in PowerPoint to help explain it. And so, I mean, for me, my DD takes that long because like I try to like just be thorough, because my main objective is to teach people. I see no point in me creating something that would be super complex and difficult to understand, because that is not my objective. My objective is to ensure everybody knows what the fuck's going on. And because like the more we know, the more we understand, like the more powerful we become. And so it takes a while. And also like I have life stuff, I have a job, and like all this life stuff's going on, but I wish I knew. And I don't know. And that was a very, very long like explanation of saying, I don't know.
It's a good explanation. Honestly, in my opinion, I feel like the hardest part is probably making it so that, you know, just a normal person would be able to understand it. Right. Like, I feel like that's probably, because then that means you understand it fully, right? To be able to explain it and like break it down like simply, I feel like you have to have a really good understanding of it. And that, in my opinion, is probably the hardest part.
Oh yeah, 100%. If you can't explain it like in 5, then you really do understand the subject itself.
Did anyone else have any more questions? Because those are the questions I wrote down.
Just at a real high level, Poenh, do you think that the algorithms are going to be messed up a little bit? We've seen just record low volume over the last few months. Does that have any effect on the, in your opinion, on the algorithm itself, or does it make it easier?
I want to first state, like, the idea or the variable volume is a misconception. I mean, so when I say that, it's like, so I stated how I didn't know shit about fuck when I first started all this shit. And so in my head, I thought volume was the amount of buys that there are. Like, I thought that was volume was. It is not a variable itself. It is essentially just purely the nomenclature or name of the total number of trades. And so that's one thing I would like to essentially clarify with people when they talk about volume, is that we don't know the ratio of what the fuck's actually going on. And so that's like one thing. The other thing is that the existence of dark pools. And so dark pools are complete shit and bullshit, because they're not required to publish any of their data whatsoever. And so because of that, I mean, like, when people look at the volume values that are publicly published, whatever, it does not include the volume from dark pools. And so, like, let's incorporate that. And so that really fucks everything up. Do you remember how, like, a few years ago, actually FINRA or whatever changed the definition of short volume? Do you recall that? Yeah. And so, I mean, like, yeah. And so, like, these different financial institutions are also be like, fuck you, we're going to change volume and we're not going to tell anybody about it, because fuck you, we do what I want. Like, even VIX, did something like this, like the CBOE or the CBOE. I don't know, like, how you pronounce it. I just know because I read it. They were like, hey guys, we're going to fucking just change the the equations that determine VIX, like, straight fucking up. Like they did that like in like the early 2000s as well. I mean, so given how yeah, they can just change the definitions, they can change the equations, they can do whatever. I mean, like, to me, I only see volume. It is kind of like a somewhat useless variable. Well, however, I do appreciate looking into volume, specifically when I see extremely low days or extremely high days that are essentially outliers. One of my, I guess the best example of this is looking into 2020, when towards the end of the year, there were multiple days that were trading in essentially the same value of the outstanding shares itself. It is essential or very important for people to know what actually volume is, the definitions of it, the how it's calculated, why the values that are published, the values that are not published. So when I look at data, I only look at basically the extremely low values or the extremely high values of volume itself. I do not look at the actual values themselves. It is given how I cannot trust that variable, I do not use it as a discrete value. Instead, I use it as a qualitative one. And all it basically does is tell me the important dates or important values or important shares. So within the volume itself, the one thing that I look into is just the discovery of outliers. Outliers are very important because they are outliers for a reason. By definition, they should be something that is highly improbable. So, I mean, if you have one outlier, okay, whatever, sure, fuck it, I don't even care, because probability states it. If you have two, okay, whatever, you know what, a probability states it. You have 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, significantly different values or outliers from the general population. That is a key indicator that something is going on. It is very improbable for having 5 or 6 values or whatever, that are multiple deviations away or from the average. That helps me to use that or identify basically something important is going on that day or whatever. Or it's the same can be opposite side, or can say on the opposite side is when something is really of extremely low value. I mean, I guess with GameStop specifically in the early 2005-ish or 2005-ish era, what was going on is that there were multiple days that were it seemed like the average was in 8 to 10 million. Well, this is pre-splitty, about 8 to 10 million in regards to volume. But there were days within it where it was only a few 100,000. And so if you have something that is on average if 10 in the 10 million, and then you see a date that has 500,000 volume, I mean, that shouldn't happen. That is very like that is too much of a difference for that to be believable. And one thing I've been working on, or one thing that I am been currently investigating is, so if we have extremely low volume data, extremely high volume day, why? And so one thing I hypothesize extremely high volume days essentially is because it does like there's no way in fuck like a bunch of like out of nowhere we're going to have like instead of 10 million like volume out of nowhere we're going to have 100 million, and that doesn't make any sense because people don't like each other, we don't talk to each other, that doesn't make any sense. And so that is indicates to me that something's like weird is going on. And one thing I've noticed when like a high volume day or like a low volume day, they also correspond with a change in overnight change. I think that there is some correlation or some sort of association with us, like the share price itself, because they're trying to like have a specific share price controlled. And so, I mean, when people ask me, what do you think about this day? I would be also very wary of people saying, oh, these things like, oh, this specific date had high volume because it's quadruple witching day, or this specific date had high volume because whatever social event you have you. And essentially it is within like statistics, it is a big no-no to just say this is like X because B is core, like they're just going, oh yeah, well, we had a very huge day, like high volume day because like RC stepped into it. And so the reason as to why that is kind of a big no-no within statistics is, one, you can't prove it. I could literally say, hey, I wore green socks yesterday, and that's the reason why we have high volume. You shouldn't use like some sort of event to determine why numerical value of why it happened. So like to all, everyone's like, oh, like this happened because like there's high values because X, Y, and Z. Everyone who says it because of an event is talking out their ass because they are making assumptions. They are not, they're making a high, like assumptions. I mean, I could bring back to my original example is that I wore green socks yesterday and that's why we're green today. You can't disprove me because fuck you. And so without the actual raw data crunching to suggest a very like confidently suggest that a correlation exists, yeah, just don't believe anyone that fucking says that this happened. It's just like, oh, I can literally, because you can't prove it. And we should also bring about how one thing that hedge funds have also been doing is one of the social engineering or psyops, whatever. We all kind of know like there's a shit ton of like really garbage articles that have been pumped out in regards to GameStop. And like a lot of them don't make sense. So this kind of would lead one to believe that a lot of these articles are almost made by like AI or whatever. They're like, oh, we're just going to copy paste all this shit and have a bunch of computers write this. And I believe that this is happening with GameStop just to ensure that there's a lot of news that is negative towards GameStop, is that a lot of these articles, their language and the way that they're written is super incorrect. You can tell that no human being wrote this, and it's using almost like machine learning. A tactic that is used, these hedge funds or these investment institutions, whatever, will purposely pump out fake news. Oh God, I don't want to use that word. Will purposely pump out fake articles to essentially not only sway people's emotions, but also on top of it, provide some sort of bullshit answer to explain why something happened. And so we need to take that into account as well. I mean, there's so much like various different types of manipulation that's going on. I mean, so
GameStop was the first thing that made me realize that there actually is fake news, right? Like, right? I really did not realize that you couldn't trust CNBC until the House Financial Committee meeting when they edited out the 10 minutes live where he was talking about how Citadel and Ken Griffin needs to have more regulations. And they literally edited out live TV. I was shocked, right? And that just kind of opened my eyes to something that's like, okay, this is definitely something weird is going on here.
You think someone would just do that? Tell lies on the internet?
Can you believe it? What happened?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, we all kind of knew that news is like a bullshit thing, but with all the attention that we're giving and all the eyes that's going on, it's becoming very obvious the amount of like amount of bullshit that's going on. I mean, there was recently an image that was like shared on Twitter or whatever of like a closed GameStop, and there's like a guy out there with like a side bag, and they're like, oh yeah, and they produce this article. It's like, oh, a man stands up front of a closed GameStop. But I mean, it's so I went to go search it because it looked like bullshit. Because of my powers of the internet and I have no life, I was like, I think I found how basically the exact image that was photoshopped, like I can, like that was used to make it seem like, oh, this like GameStop closed down, but like all in reality it's still open. It's in like I believe the specific one they took a photo of is in Germany. But I mean, like we can't trust any of this shit. And I mean, yeah, it's all fucking bullshit. Yeah.
Literally though. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You really can't trust anything. It's messed up.
Yeah, and it's disgusting, the level the level of manipulation. I guess one thing I should say is like, so I'm an engineer, I'm a fucking weird nerd, and yeah, socially awkward, whatever. And given how I have not paid attention to vesting stuff or whatever have you until the sneeze happened, and given how I have been having such a high degree of success in incorporating engineering methods and that are used in like process characterization and whatever have you onto the GameStop share price, that is a big red flag for me, because essentially someone like me who didn't know shit about fuck was able to overall successfully analyze GameStop shares. That is like, that just to me alone says the amount of manipulation that's going on. I mean, I should not be having this amount of success. I didn't know shit about fuck. I mean, I didn't know about like financials, or I didn't know about basically any type of traditional trading. And it's like one of my things I very frequently say is the more success I have in regards to characterizing the GameStop share price, it just means the more fucked up everything is, because I should not be having this amount of success.
Yeah. Should we move on to Tibbs' posts?
Oh yes.
Yeah, why not, right? So Tibbs had his post, his spotlight post was about his Taste the Rainbow series. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your whole series that you've been doing?
You know, I'm trying to figure out why things move down together. I think one of the things that I was really taking a guess with back a year ago was, hey, I think we're just going to keep continuing down. And lots of people were upset at that. And then a year passed and I said, well, hey, we kept on moving down. So it's just a matter of why, and is there anything that we can find about how we move down that might reveal what's making us move down? Is there something we can find that's consistent?
So have you found anything that is consistent?
Yes, we're moving down.
Got it.
Yeah. Now, if we want to get into kind of those questions that I think you had, some of those things I might be able to point out along the way.
Okay. Did you want to share your screen? Would that help?
Yeah. So let's start up with that first question, because I kind of started pairing everything else up with that.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between a linear and a logarithmic scale?
Okay. Can everybody see my screen? There we go.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Oh, cool.
Okay, cool. So this is Little Susie's lemonade stand. This is a stock chart of Little Susie's lemonade stand. It's not the S&P 500. This is just an example of why I'm talking about this. In linear, when we're talking in linear scale, equal dollar size moves are going to appear to move the same. In logarithmic scale, equal percentage size moves will appear the same. And if you're looking at a stock chart within a day, linear scale works out really well. If you wanted to analyze anything that's over a long period of time, anything with a really wide y-axis, a lot of price, then logarithmic scale tends to work better. So, like I said, here's Little Susie's lemonade stand. She's been open for 100 years, pumping out lemony goodness. I know, right?
Sorry, I just love your titles and also your cartoons. I'm sorry, I should probably mute myself.
I know, it's very easy to tell that I teach public school because, I explain this in ridiculous ways to kids too. Not this particularly, but, that's just how I'm used to doing it. And we're looking at this in linear scale. On the y-axis side, every single time we step up a brick, it's always by, 250. And on this scale, it looks like from the time she was open until about 1995, her business wasn't doing too much. But then all of a sudden 1995 hits and the world suddenly wants lemonade like crazy, and bada bing, bada boom, she's off to the races. And that really ignores a lot of this first, 50 or so, 60 years of when she was open. So if we switch this over to logarithmic scale, And I'll pull this back in so we can see. Yep. Okay. Now we can see that really consistently, she's always been growing the business. More or less, we're always just seeing growth. There's periods where it's down, but more or less the trajectory is up. And to highlight this, I'm going to throw in some marks here. About once every single one of these marks is the business grew by 100%. 100% every single time. And we see this now that it's always growing consistently. But if we flip back to linear, then all this really beginning, we never see what's changing until over here. Now it's way too big, but we miss all this stuff in here. You know, we're missing her first mobile food truck launch. We're missing shipping to Antarctica and Narnia and everything else that really grew this business huge. So let's take a minute and flip this back to GameStop. Sorry, I'm going to flip over to fun. There we go. And scrunching it in. Now we're in linear scale again. What I've heard folks say is, you know, everything is shrinking. We don't have these gigantic rips anymore. All that crazy movement that was happening over here back in like spring 2021, it just doesn't happen anymore. Well, I'm going to put us into log scale. And now we start seeing that, hey, wait a second, there still is big stuff happening. And if I throw on my TTR channel, I'll start measuring out some of the stuff in a bit. But one of the things with log that I found was now all these peaks that we see, these ones where all of a sudden, you know, market was halting, they form on a much nicer straight line. When we are in linear, it's going to look nasty for a second, they didn't. They kind of went down at different intervals. Log, everything snaps back in. And one of the other things I'm noticing too is that our bottoms, before we take on these massive rips, they're also laying along the same parallel. Some of these spots that happen after we take a drop, they're laying on the same parallel, which is why I kind of pay attention to these inner motions. But as far as I was saying about giant rips again, there we go. So here was our big one that happened in May 2021. You know, we came for our bottom and it starts running and about 150% run. And, you know, Poenh, this is one that you had marked out, but it was about, what, 2 weeks long, give or take?
Yeah, something like that.
And then this next time that it happened, this one happened a lot faster, but again, 150%. And, you know, kind of the next thing that I would kind of hope, I know people are going to yell at me for hoping this, hope to happen was if we continued on, you know, what would happen if all of a sudden the price did some crazy drop down to $8 or so, hit this, and then shot up to the top again. And another case of just another giant movement. And in linear, this would look very, very, very tiny. People would be going like, yeah, it's a drop in the water. Who cares? We're used to the days of when, you know, the price would run $200 over a couple of weeks. And now suddenly it's $15. They don't care. But I think these movements still matter, because if I'm going to be looking for something that deals with us being within like a set percentage drop, like maybe this channel is all built from a set percentage drop, what's that going to look like? What would I have to find? What would that look like? How would you build it?
So we have these very different lines that you have defined and such like that. I am curious what is your criteria? Why is like the white line right there? Why is like the blue and teal and whatever, like those values? What characteristic or parameter, open, high, low, close are you using to create these lines?
Right. And, you know, I'll start with this is I know you come at things from a very strong, you know, what's the math behind this? How could I take the data that I actually saw and how could I build this? That's not necessarily how I built it. I really did start out by saying, hey, wait, our peaks line up, and that's really where it started, from that white line. And then lower down, I was saying, hey, wait, bottoms fit too. These inner lines, Fibonacci retracement lines, they're not even like a certain standard I use. This is just what they fit in. Bring it up. This is the normal setup that you would find if you just draw on a Fibonacci retracement. Trying to remember how to go about this. If you were to divide, so if you looked at your Fibonacci sequence and you started dividing one number to the left each time, the decimal that you would get from that division is that is that level, that difference each time. I'd have to dig back into my notes. I could send them over to you to show you how to derive each one, but that's where each one of those would come from. I don't really have the secret answer of why these things would pop up the way they do, other than maybe it's just here's what happens when you have millions of traders at once making different decisions on when they would eventually land on these different spots. One last thing I'll talk about with this log scale thing is actually kind of ties into the BAT's seller boxing DD. And it was one of the things that when I started switching from linear to logarithmic and started really thinking about the shape of how things moved, that it started making sense to me like, hey, this could be very beneficial if you were trying to beat the crap out of a business. So some of the things that he brought up in his DD about what shorts would need is it's not just that you're going to be trying to drive a price to zero, because if you did that too quickly, investors and the business itself could fight back. If for some reason the price of GameStop tomorrow went to a penny and it just stayed there for any significant amount of time between apes and the company itself, every single share of there would be bought, and given that people DRS, it would be locked away that way, and that would really screw over shorts. So what they need to do is say, how can we keep hammering down on a business for the longest amount of time possible, so when we finally go in for the kill, no one's fighting back, because they're going to be trying to do what? Get it off the open market, get to the point where, regular people can't even trade it anymore. So some of the things that they would have to do, they would have to keep on hammering down the absolute highest the price could get. So that way, as it descended, even if a business wanted to do a share offering, they're going to get less and less and less and less money for that offering. They also don't want it to be dropping too fast, because they don't want anyone to be able to come in and essentially buy everything up and just keep them from ever being able to, to shut the door on them, I guess. And the last thing they would need is they would want people on the inside to make sure that no fight was going to occur. They had that for a long time, and then they did not have that any longer, right around this time right here, May, June 2021. But as I'm looking at it now and thinking about the shape of things, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what you would want to do if you were a short. You would want to stretch this out as long as possible until you knew it was time to strike, and then you would go. So anyways, Platt, I think that goes into that covers everything I really want to talk about with linear and log.
Yeah, well, that you explained it in your post, but actually seeing it like this, I love the fact that you can share your screen and then go over it that way, because now I get it and it makes sense why you would do it that way.
Yep.
All right, so you've been using. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, hey Bear. So I mean, like, one of the beautiful things about using logarithmic value, because it makes everything, first of all, it makes everything like super high values. You can easily view them on super small values. So have you applied this type of idea to pre-2021 value? I mean, like data, because I mean, you would have fun with that, because although right now the overall shape is pretty flat, from like 2013 to 2020, it was going downwards. And then from like basically 2002, 2008, it had like an exponential curve. And I would be interested in seeing, applying your technique to a different overall, I guess, movements or share price and such like that.
So this is just me copy pasting exact same channel, but here's everything from going back to 2016, which kind of is exactly what I was saying is, hey, what if a short was trying to do this back then? Exact time tape deal. Would they be trying to keep this going, in log scale, going as flat as possible? Because when they finally decide to strike, they can't do it for forever. They couldn't do something like, send the business down like that. Somebody along the way could have swooped in. They want to make sure as they're going down, they've picked out their exact time when it's time to go for the kill.
Interesting. So It does match even before too. That's kind of cool.
I don't know. And you're right. If I just draw two lines, they're short. I guess I can fit something in there. Does it have to be that exact one? No, it doesn't. Is there a possibility that the similar type idea could occur? Yes, but and this was something that Crybad had mentioned before we had started up, which is talking about dooms and stuff like that. Is one of the things to build this type of corridor variance swap, if it was going to be descending like this, is that you would need tons and tons and tons of dupes, deep out of the money puts, to help to build this. And I don't know if I'd be able to find them before all that. So, that's what I'm working on.
So you've been using your model to try to time the dips. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah. So I'm going to zoom us into just our last past year. And, I'll ask the question, what is dip? How would I even know that maybe this is a good time? Anyways, and this gets, I think, a little bit into something that Poenh had mentioned earlier about like why any of this stuff would work anyways. But if I just look over the last past year and check out and see what we've done, I said, yeah, this top line is, what I'm noticing is the top, the highest we're typically ever at. Bottom line is typically the lowest we're ever at. And somewhere in the middle, actually not somewhere, I know where, this middle green line, that's about half, it is halfway between top and bottom. We've been getting to the point where this is about as far as the price normally will drop. We have had a couple of really big moments that it's gone below, but most of the time we're about there. And if I was looking to save money, if I was looking to say, hey, I teach school, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have any insider knowledge, I don't have any special trading knowledge, just how do I know when I'm clipping a coupon and getting a good deal? So this practical use of TTR has really been, for me, is just saying like, okay, how can I pick when to buy? And I've been using kind of this idea of saying, hey, what's the lowest relative to the channel that we've made it in? When we get there, that's when I'm going to buy. And I get it because there's been lots and lots and lots of people over the last year who say the words, past performance doesn't predict future results. I get that. But we've continued down, like I said earlier. And I get that at some point in time, this channel, we're going to break above it and, everyone will be thrilled about that. But in the meantime, here's what I'm using to clip my coupons on. But the nice thing about it is that if, as long as I'm patient and saying I'm going to wait for 50%, I got months of time in between. I can stick a little bit of money away each paycheck, stick some more money away, stick some more money, and boom. Now I can actually make a buy, and I've gotten a better price than I would have at any time in between these two dots. And if I was being even really more frugal with my money, maybe it's I only want to buy when I'm hitting yellow or red, something like that. Knowing that, hey, we've only seen red once in the last year. I guess we've seen yellow twice, but green's been pretty common. And just zooming back even further, and we really haven't even seen this bottom line since, last March.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So for sure. So I see that your peaks for the white line is in like in April, November, and April again. And
Yeah.
so, but there is there is a section around August that goes above that line. So do you have a idea or an explanation as to why you think that occurred?
Yeah. So, if I'm working on this current idea of this channel being due to a corridor variance swap, it's not that you couldn't step outside the corridor. It's just that that's when you're no longer making money on that. That it's only paying out money when you stay within inside. So, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit when Platt asks me about Marge, but that's one of the few things where I was looking at. I was like, well, could this really be critical Marge if you can just walk over the line? So it went over that. They didn't want to be over that. We pushed back down. But is there something about this line right here where it's like, okay, we could cross over it. They just don't want to. That's why, like you said, it's built out of all these times when it has stopped there. But if there's nothing that actually says, hey, you must stop, it's just this is when we're not making money on this. That's why I think that. And I know that probably popped out to you because you had mentioned before your point about outliers. But just to mention kind of, again, something weird that happens. So I'm just going to draw something. This is going to be pretty close to parallel. I'm just freehanding this. Here's Sneeze Peak, and let's see if I can line it up. There's Sneeze Peak, and that's what we hit in that June run. And again, I don't know if this is really, relevant to what it is, but it's, again, something just kind of weird that I look at. And I'm like, well, should probably remember this to see if it makes sense later on.
So like given your downwards like logarithmic lines and stuff, what do you think that essentially is going to keep on going like in that like direction, or what do you think? I mean, given your like hypothesis and given your hypothesis and your DD, what do you think is going to happen?
Okay, I'll drag this over. Okay, this one. This is again if I just dragged the same type of channel down below to early before the sneeze. So let's say that this idea was still going on back there. Sometime around where this C and D was, this is right when Ryan Cohn is getting into this. This is when Roaring Kitty posts are going wild. This is when the OG sub is starting to really dive into everything. So I'm wondering if that's what really started causing enough pressure to rip out of this thing and we start flying upwards. Right around E is when these big piles of dumps started appearing. And I'm wondering if that was them saying, holy shit, rebuild the channel up here so we can get control of it again. And then around I, that's when swaps reporting goes away and they're saying, maybe it's time to hide what we're doing. Because if you started to look back, in 2021, there was people doing decent DDs on this idea on swaps. And then this stuff starts disappearing. And, just kind of wonder if they started saying, hey, holy shit, they might catch on to us.
Hey Tib, going out on GME's current path, how soon do you think it before you talk about it going down and touching that bottom line, or at least the green line? I was just curious to what the current trajectory is before we are like in the $10 range or anything like that.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'll flip out to this. I know, and that's the other thing with logarithmic scale is it keeps on getting shallower and like if there was a way to graph this on linear, it'd be great. I just can't. At least not with the tools that I have in TradingView. The top of that would start coming in somewhere around September 2024. But realistically, if we just started having a random weird, everything must go sale suddenly tomorrow, we could be at $10. That's where at least the bottom line is. Do I think that's happening? No, I have no predictions on when or, how far something might go. That's not kind of my thing. It's just where do I think it might.
No, but the potential would be there if there was a cataclysmic event. But just like we broke out of the channel, or RC buying in, or some other catalyst, then we fly out of the channel, and you suspect that they would make a new channel, or at least if history repeats.
So that's why I'm kind of interested to see what happens come October when that swaps reporting comes back. Because let's say that happens and apes are able to dig into it and they suddenly find, hey, we can see how you built this. Okay. Now it starts ripping up again. Even if they build a new channel, aren't apes going to be able to find it again and say, hey, we figured out this is where you hide it. This is how you build it. And you might have delayed it, but now everybody still knows you're trying to hide this bomb. So if that's the case, I mean, hide it as long as you want. I guess I'll sit here and just chill for as long as they want.
I guess I'll ask the next question I've written down. So why did you retire Marge?
So we touched on this a little bit because, for a long time, I mean, I included her on all my posts. I had lots of very fun pictures of her that some people liked and some people didn't so much. But anywho, what I started noticing, especially like around May-ish last year, was that there was lots of people who started dogpiling onto this idea of critical margin. And it wasn't just Ein's viewpoint of it as saying that, hey, collateral might be decreasing, and that's why you would see something like this. It was people being vehement about, nope, it is this line. Anything that crosses this line will result in MOAS. That, game over. And the thing that kind of stuck out to me is this was not going to make a lot of sense, was that not all these lines that people were showing were the same. So I think I got this ready. This was something I brought up in a post from July last year when it was cloudy with a chance of Marge balls update. Here was all these different variations that people had drawn of this critical margin line. My own was in there at one point, and all these were being drawn also in linear scale, which looking back, I'm like, hey, wait a second. You shouldn't do that. But anyways, they're all drawn. These are all different takes that had been posted on Superstonk. and anything that was in this yellow box hadn't happened yet when I made that post. Well, time goes on, and suddenly we see, hey, wait a second, we crossed all of these, and unless someone didn't tell me, we have not MOASed. So clearly some of these critical things didn't happen. March didn't happen. And even like Poenh had mentioned, we crossed right here and no MOAS occurred. So maybe it's not that it has to be a line where Marge is. It can be something else that they don't want to be over. Another thing I'll bring up too, I'm just going to compare kind of rest of market to GameStop. Here's our major indices. And let's make sure I'm just so I can see everything on screen at once. Here's the major indices. They are in log scale too, but I made it so that way the movement that we saw on them is equal to the movement that I have here matched up on GameStop. So I know these are very, very, very crunched down, but it's because if I measure back from just pre-sneeze to now, difference in S&P is like 9%. Difference in Dow is like 9.1. Difference in NASDAQ is 2%. They're basically flat. So if we had shorts who had, the whole rest of the market as their long positions, what exactly part of their collateral is dropping so quickly if they had just owned, I don't know, anything else? So that was one of the things I saw too. I was like, well, there's no real sense of why this would be a straight line. There's no real sense of why it would constantly be decreasing. And one thing I'll point out too is that we know from, it's as close as I can get it. Draw my line here. From about here till the beginning of 2022, these things were all going up in value. They were all increasing. It wasn't until afterwards we started seeing the markets on all of them dropping. So again, if this Marge line is dropping the whole time, why would it be dropping while these are, let's see if I can do it this way. Why would it be dropping if these were going up? Why would it be dropping if these were going up and still dropping the same way while they're going out and down?
Oh, you're saying because they would have more collateral, so they would have more room to allow GME to flow?
Just why, if this line's going the same way the whole direction, what in their collateral is doing that, would also be doing the same thing? I don't know. Maybe it's, you could say is, oh, well, they're just constantly adding more and more and more and more and more to their short position. They got to balance it out some way. I just don't believe that it would be a straight, nice line. So that's what I think is that, at least my current thought is maybe it has something to do with this corridor variance swap idea.
I still have one more question for Tibbs. So last question, Tibbs. What's the most useful thing you've learned from someone else to adjust your metrics?
So, and I thought on this for a while only because with, a lot of people who have weighed in or I've chatted with, I don't have one definite thing I can just nail on. But what I can say is that these guys I'm just throwing up on screen have been some of the nicest people I've talked to, at least when telling me that I'm wrong about something or to say, hey, try this. They've always come up with a lot of really good reasons why or suggestions or examples to look at. So if you see things from any of these people that pop up on the sub, it's worth either checking it out or at the very least ask a question if you're not sure, because at least in my case, they've all been great about just ask a question and they'll give a straightforward answer.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you both for coming to this little end of the week post update to kind of go with your posts to sort of explain them more for people who are audio visual learners like me. So I actually learned a lot more doing this. So thank you. It was definitely cool to have both of you here doing charting and just all of that. So thank you so much for coming. Hopefully we can get, a few more people to do this, and that would be really nice. Yeah, the DD's definitely never done, that's for sure. If you want to see things like this, let us know. If you have any ideas, let us know. We're definitely open to any ideas, so please let us know anything. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to add before we end this?
Well, allow me to say thank you for hosting this event. Thank you for putting the effort to have a week focused on DDers. Thank you for trying to like return Superstonk and any actual GameStop type focus subreddit back to more like informational like focused hub. Like it is something we definitely need because there's always more to learn, and the more that we know, like the stronger we become. The DD is never done, and so thank you so much for having this stuff and having us and doing what you do. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Tibbs?
Just to echo what you said, thank you a lot for having me in to do this. It was a good time. I think best thing I have gotten out of Superstonk is just that so many people have been willing to come in and not just tell me that I'm wrong, but then explain, hey, where was the mistake? How can we improve this? How can we make this better? And it's been a good time figuring out all of those places where you can fix an idea, say, okay, this didn't work, try this again, try this. And that type of discussion really is why I think that we've gotten to where we are. We keep on improving upon an idea and making it better. So I was glad to come in here and do this. I hope everyone continues the same.
Thank you. Thank you so much.